See, originally, what was the first anesthetic agent that was demonstrated? It was ether, right? By WTG Morton. So, what was the problem with ether? Like when they used it, the output of ether was not, they were not able to control it, okay, the vapors of ether. The second problem what they were facing was that when ether was evaporating, there was some amount of cooling effect. So, the temperature also could not be, compensated for the fall in temperature could not be compensated. So that's why what happened, we started improving our vaporizers, and now finally we are using something known as modern vaporizers, which are using currently. Okay. So in modern vaporizers, there are basically three different types. So there's one variable bypass vaporizer, which the one which is injection type, and then we have the cassette vaporizer. So before we start with vaporizer, we need to know certain principles of physics. Okay, what is vaporization is occurring, right? So that's why we need to know the physics principle. What is happening? Anesthetic agents, whichever we are filling into our vaporizer, they are all liquids. They are going to convert into vapors, and those vapors are going to the patient. So how that vaporization is occurring? For that, we need to know certain physics principles. So the first principle of physics that we will need to keep in mind when we understand vaporizers is Dalton's law of partial pressure, which I put over here. So I have explained to you previously what did Dalton say in this law, that if there's any mixture if there's a gaseous mixture, that means that mixture contains different gases. So for example, when we are giving the patient a gaseous mixture, right, it contains oxygen, nitrous, right, plus isoflurane or sevoflurane, or it might be containing only oxygen plus inhalation agent, or air plus oxygen, right? So this is a gaseous mixture. So how much pressure will be exerted by each individual gas, right? So that is what we have to understand with the help of Dalton's law of partial pressure. What does that? The total pressure exerted by any gas is equal to P1, P2, P3, depending on how many ever gases are it's composed of, right? So if I tell you that we are going to use the nitrous, plus we are going to use oxygen, plus we are going to use sevoflurane for giving anesthesia. So what I mean is that the 760, which is because we are giving it at our sea level, right? So if I'm giving 49% nitrous, 50% oxygen, right? This is how we put, I suppose, 1% sevoflurane, for example. Okay. So this is how we do it. So what does this mean? Dalton's law, right? So when you see 49% of 760, that gives you 37.2 372.4 mmHg of nitrous. Okay. Plus how much? Half of 760, which is 380 mmHg oxygen, plus the remaining 1%. So 7.6 mmHg of CO. So this is what I mean by the partial pressures. And this is what Dalton's law is, applied of Dalton's law, that we need to understand when we are giving inhalation agent to a patient. So in principle of physics, what is evaporation? What is vapor pressure? Right? Because that anesthetic liquid is getting evaporated. What is evaporation? It is simply the phase of that molecule is changing. It is in the liquid phase. For example, if this is a chamber, this is liquid phase over here. So you can see this is liquid phase. This is a gas. All right. So even if I take a glass of water, just imagine a glass of water. It's half filled glass of water. So water is there. Water is in the liquid phase. What is there above? It is a gas, right? It is air, right? So what is evaporation? Let's understand with water. Evaporation is what? The water molecules which are present at the surface of that water, liquid form, is slowly getting converted into another form, another state, which is the vapor state. That is evaporation. Simple as that. Is evaporation occurring throughout the liquid? No. It is only occurring at the surface of the liquid. This is one important point of evaporation. It is a surface phenomenon. Only the molecules present at the surface of that liquid have the capacity to take energy and convert into its gaseous form. Molecule is the same. It is H2O, or it is an inhalation agent like sevoflurane, isoflurane, right? This molecule is just changing from liquid form to vapor form. That is it. That is evaporation, right? So now That is why we call our inhalation agents volatile, because they have the capacity to evaporate. All right. So when does evaporation occur? Have you experienced if you place water on your hand and there is a breeze coming and you will feel cooling effect? So what is happening? The breeze is coming, that air is coming, and it is causing the evaporation of the molecules on the surface of that liquid. So if I have a glass of water and there is air, constant flow of air that is happening, or there is a bucket of water and there's a constant flow of air, over time you'll see that bucket, the level of water has gone down. Why? From the surface, the molecules are slowly getting converted to gaseous form, right? So same, if I have an anesthetic agent, if I have a bottle of sevoflurane, I leave it open, it's going to evaporate, right? Similarly, if I fill that sevoflurane inside the vaporizer, it will evaporate. But is air going there? No. What is flowing over that liquid? It is the fresh gas flow which we have set in our flow meter, right? We have set oxygen, nitrous, right? Or whatever, oxygen, air. So these are the gases, fresh gas. So this is flowing over the anesthetic liquid and it is picking up molecules. Okay. So this is a surface phenomenon, evaporation. Now what is happening? The liquid form has converted to vapor form. From here, from this surface, one molecule is slowly getting transported. Sorry. So if this is the surface, molecules are slowly moving up, getting evaporated, and they are forming vapors. All right. Now, example, if I have this beaker and this beaker is open, okay, and the vapors are collecting over here. Okay. So the pressure exerted, whenever vapors happen, there's going to be some pressure which is going to be exerted by these molecules against the walls of the beaker, right? The molecules are constant motion, right? So they will go and hit the walls of the beaker. Then what will happen? The pressure which is exerted by these molecules is known as vapor pressure, because it is the pressure exerted by the vapor molecules. Simple. So that is why this is known as, once the pressure exerted by these vapor molecules is known as vapor pressure. Okay. Now, what we need to understand, what is saturated vapor pressure? Okay. So, saturated, there is something known as saturated vapor pressure. That happens when, if I close this beaker, I close the compartment. Okay. Now the compartment is closed. It's a closed space up. There is gas in that. And the vapors are there. But can the vapors escape out? They can't. So the vapors cannot escape out. What other place can they go? They can go back in the liquid. Can they escape elsewhere? No. So now what is happening? When the number of molecules which are entering, number of molecules that are entering the back, vapor molecules entering back into the liquid phase becomes equal to the number of molecules that are exiting the liquid into vapor phase. That means the incoming and outgoing number of molecules are balanced with each other. The number is constant. That is the time we'll say, okay, equilibrium has been achieved. All right. So that is known as evaporative equilibrium. That means what? Now, if 5 molecules are going out in the vapor phase, similarly, 5 molecules are entering into the liquid phase. All right, it's just a movement between the phases. It should be equal. That is the time we say evaporative equilibrium has been achieved. Okay, so now this that evaporative equilibrium, when you can achieve, when evaporation is occurring in a closed space. So you see, this is a closed space. That is the time you are able to achieve something known as evaporative equilibrium. Now, what is the pressure exerted by the vapors? Now, what has happened? Equilibrium has occurred. So this whole over here, the gaseous phase has been saturated with vapors. It is fully saturated, right? So now this is known as the pressure exerted by all these molecules against the walls is known as saturated vapor pressure. Okay. Keep in mind the vapor pressure. So vapor pressure is dependent on temperature. If I give heat, if I provide heat to this liquid, right now, was I providing heat? No, it was a surface phenomenon. When I start providing heat over here, the speed of evaporation will increase. Okay, evaporation will increase, vapor pressure will increase, which you will understand with the help of this graph. Okay, now in this graph, can you see that the last line which I've drawn here is of water? Above, all our inhalation agents are there. Why are we comparing it with water? Because water is also liquid. All of these are also liquids. All of them are evaporating. Same like water, right? Now, how it is for water? At any particular, suppose I take any temperature, 30 degrees. This is temperature. And this is vapor pressure, vertical. So, what is written over here? Vapor pressure is unique for each liquid at a given temperature. So, at a given temperature for water, suppose 35 degrees, the vapor pressure over here, this is specific for water. So, 35 degrees for water, it is a specific value. If I go to 55 degrees for water, it is a specific value. This value will never change. This is a fixed value. This graph is a fixed value that they have found. So, have you noticed as the temperature increases, the vaporization is increasing? What I told you over here, temperature dependent, right? So as the temperature increases, vaporization increases, and more vapors are generated, and vapor pressure is increased. So that's why the graph is going in this direction. Okay. Now what are we concerned with? Water? No, we are concerned with all the inhalation agents. So desflurane, iso, halo, SIBO, all of these. So they also have got a vapor pressure which is unique to that agent for that particular temperature. So if I say at 20 degrees for desflurane, the vapor pressure is a specific value. If the desflurane temperature falls to 15 degrees, then the vapors generated, the pressure is specific. Understood that this is a specific value depending upon the temperature and the liquid. Now, what we have to understand, what is this on dial settings, how we write, what is written on the dial? V by V percent, volume percent, right? What is that? It is called gas concentration. And what is MAC? MAC also we are expressing in the term of a percentage, right? Do we write MAC as mmHg? So now we'll understand that part, okay? Express a proportion of a gas in a mixture of gas. Dalton's law, right? If I want to express a proportion of a gas, if I want to express the proportion, so if this is oxygen plus nitrous, and I want to express the proportion of nitrous in this gaseous mixture, what are the ways I can express it? Okay, so I can express it. We understood already. One way to express it is what? Partial pressure, which we have already learned in Dalton's law. What is the second way that we can express this contribution of individual gas? It's expressed as volume percentage, also denoted by this. Now let's understand what is this volume percentage. So you can explain it in the form of pressures. You can also say in the form of volume percentage. So what did we do? Volume percentage, right? If there is 100% gas mixture, what was this? This was volume percentage. This was volume percentage, and this was the expression in the form of partial pressures. These are the two ways, is what I'm trying to tell you. Now, how will I explain this volume percentage? Okay, so what is volume percent? It is volume of gas, whichever gas you're taking, okay, upon the volume of total gaseous mixture. Simple. Very simple this is. What does this mean? Now, there is something known as Avogadro's hypothesis, which you need to understand, which is a very simple concept. Okay, that the volume which is occupied by a particular gas, so the volume occupied by oxygen, air, nitrous, carbon dioxide, any gas. So the volume occupied by that gas is going to be dependent on the number of molecules, not the size of the molecules. Volume depends on number of molecules. Okay. So this is, can I say that this is the same thing as I put it as number of molecules of a particular gas upon number of molecule in total gas, right? It's the same thing. Okay. Now, we know also, you should know that since we can use these two interchangeably. We can use these two interchangeably. Why? What was partial pressure? What is pressure? Pressure exerted by each individual gas, right? Molecule. Gas molecules are exerting some amount of pressure, and that pressure is partial pressure. So again, this was based on molecules. So partial pressure also depends upon the number of molecules. Volume percent also depends. Volume occupied by that gas also depends upon number of molecules. Hence, these two can be used interchangeably.
Yes.
We are expressing minimum alveolar concentration. Minimum alveolar concentration, MAC. How is MAC expressed? What is MAC of desflurane? 6. What is it? It's a percent value actually. Minimum alveolar concentration, okay, is actually as a volume percent. Okay, so MAC is expressed as volume percent. How will we know what is the partial pressure exerted by this desflurane or iso? So this can be used interchangeably with the term of MAPP, minimum alveolar partial pressure, which is expressed as mmHg. Is this clear? It is the partial pressure exerted by the inhalation agent, which we are expressing as volume percent. What happened in the previous equation? I told you 1% isoflurane. I told you 1% iso. So you will calculate the MAP. This is the minimum alveolar concentration. So what is the minimum alveolar partial pressure? It is 1% of 760 because I am at sea level, which gave me what? A minimum alveolar partial pressure of 7.6 mmHg. So we have to always keep the MAP in mind. But we as anesthetists want to make things easy, so we use the volume percent in mind, right? We always in practice use volume percent. We use 1%. We use this terminology more. We don't use this terminology. But you should keep this terminology in mind because when you administer anesthetic agent, inhalation agent, what do you want to achieve? A state of equilibrium. Alveolus is to blood, is to brain. State of equilibrium, what? Pressures, right? So this is a pressure value, right? So you have to keep this in mind. So if somebody tells you 1% isoflurane is going, you have to keep in mind, okay, this is the partial pressure of isoflurane in the alveolus. And I want equilibrium to occur with blood. And then I want equilibrium to occur with brain. Because depth of anesthesia ultimately depends upon pressure equilibrium, not volume percent equilibrium, right? So although you visualize volume percent on your monitor, on your dial settings, concentration settings, you should have this at the back of your mind. In this table, if you will see, the first thing which is mentioned is saturated vapor pressure, which is expressed in mmHg at 20 degrees Celsius. Now, why are we taking this at 20 degrees Celsius? Didn't I show you that graph and the saturated vapor pressure? What I told you, vertically we had pressures, horizontally we had temperature. For each temperature, that vapor pressure is a specific value, right? That is what I explained to you in that graph. So here in this table, you can see that the 4 inhalation agents which they have given us, that the saturated vapor pressure of halothane, CO, iso, des is so and so values at 20 degrees because it is temperature dependent and specific to every agent. So is the first parameter understood by you, that how we got the saturated vapor pressure? The pressure exerted. So if by isoflurane molecules in the vapor phase, the vapors of isoflurane molecules are exerting a pressure which is equal to 238 mmHg at a temperature of 20 degrees Celsius. Okay. And because saturated vapor pressure is what? An evaporative equilibrium. There is an equilibrium, right? So this is the pressure exerted by isoflurane. This is okay, right? Now, I told you pressure and concentration, you can derive one from the other, right? Because they are related, because it all depends on number of molecules, right? So the next parameter, if you can see, what you can see is saturated vapor concentration at 20 degrees Celsius, 1 atmosphere. Okay. So at 1 atmosphere means what? At sea level. They have seen all these values at sea level. Or because, why are we talking about sea level? Because all our vaporizers are calibrated at sea level. All right, the calibration of our vaporizers is done at that, okay, pressure. So what is the meaning? So volume percent is calculated. Okay, so what is the saturated vapor concentration? So isoflurane, I know, okay, pressure exerted by isoflurane at 20 degrees is 238. So how much is the concentration? How much is the percent? So that will be 238 divided by 760. And you find out the percent. And that percent, if you will calculate, you will get 31%, which is mentioned over here in the table. And if I do 31% of 760 mm Hg, I will get 238 mm Hg. Just like it is interchangeable. It is the third parameter in this is mentioned as MAC of a 40-year-old person. In volume percent, it's explained. What is this? This is volume percent MAC, right? So now what they have done, they have given you the MAC values. This is usually the value that you learn and you use practically every day, day in and day out. MAC of isoflurane 1.2, MAC of sevoflurane 1.9, MAC of desflurane 6. What is the meaning? So if I tell you, come on, calculate and tell me what is the minimum alveolar partial pressure, right? Because the next parameter in this is what? MAPP, partial pressure, the pressure exerted by that particular concentration, right? So if I tell you 6%, so what for desflurane, what is the MAPP? It is going to be what? 6% of 760, because I am doing this at 1 atmosphere. So 6% of 760, if you will see, will come to 45.6 of desflurane. Can you see in that MAPP? Fluorine MAPP, what is this? 46.5, 45.6, sorry, 45.6. Okay. So if I will tell you what is the MAPP of sevoflurane whose MAC is 1.9, so 1.9 into 760 will give you this value. Okay. This latent heat of vaporization. So it is the amount of energy that is consumed by the liquid to convert into vapor. Okay. So it is the number of calories. I told you it is the amount of energy that is consumed by that molecule. Energy, what is the unit of energy? Calories, what is what we use, right? So it is a number of calories that is required, right, to change 1 gram of liquid, okay, to vapor without change in temperature, without causing any change in temperature of that liquid. How much energy will that 1 gram of liquid need to convert to its vapor phase? If no externally energy is given, if I'm not providing energy of any kind to that liquid, from where will that liquid derive its energy? From where will it derive its calories to move out to the vapor phase? It will derive the energy from within itself, within the liquid. All right. It will consume energy within itself. And then what will happen? Because it has consumed calories, consumed energy from within itself and moved to the vapor phase, some energy is lost in that liquid. Hence, the temperature of the liquid will fall. All right. And now, because the temperature of the liquid has fallen down, the amount of energy, now the energy store of that liquid has reduced. Now, next time, less amount of, instead of 1 gram, less amount of liquid will be able to vaporize because less energy is available. So is this understood? Every time if supplied heat is not there, supplied energy is not there, it will consume within itself and its temperature will fall. I think the same problem we encounter with ISODES, with all our inhalation agents, because they are also liquids, they are also evaporating, they also cool down. If they cool down, what will happen? The amount of vapors will be less. If less vapors are there, less vapors will go to the patient. Patient will come to a lighter plane, right? We don't want that to happen. So there is some amount of temperature compensation. Either there is a temperature compensation or there is some supplied heat. We want to provide a constant amount of energy to that liquid anesthetic agent inside a vaporizer so that the output remains constant. That's why we're using modern vaporizers, right? We don't want the output to keep fluctuating because of cooling and warming. We want a constant output. What I have set on the concentration settings, the dial settings, I want exactly that percent to be delivered. Hence, we have these modern vaporizers which are temperature compensated. So this is the applied aspect of knowing this. All right. When will a liquid start boiling? If I'm putting a vessel of water on the gas and I switch it on, at one point the water is going to boil. Boiling is not a surface phenomenon. The whole liquid is getting heated up. The whole liquid is getting heated up and it's getting converted to vapor. That is boiling. When does boiling occur? The boiling point of any liquid is directly proportional to the atmospheric pressure. If I go to a higher altitude, boiling will start occurring at a lower temperature. See, as altitude increases, as the height increases, atmospheric pressure will decrease. And therefore, because this is direct proportional, even the boiling point will decrease. If I want to go down in the submarine, okay, at a very high, so what will happen? Atmospheric pressure increases, right? As I go below in the submarine underwater. So what will happen? The atmospheric pressure will increase and the boiling point will increase. So all our vaporizers are calibrated at what? The calibration is at 20 degrees Celsius, 1 atmosphere pressure, right? And what is the saturated vapor pressure of desflurane? At 20 degrees Celsius and 1 atmospheric pressure, the value is actually 669 mmHg. This we know from the table. This has already been understood from the graph that for a particular temperature in a particular liquid, the saturated vapor pressure is a fixed value. So at 20 degrees for desflurane, saturated vapor pressure is 669. And when I increase the temperature to 22.8 degrees Celsius, which is, I'm saying it's the boiling point of desflurane. At 1 atmosphere, desflurane, okay, desflurane temperature has increased to this much. Now, the saturated vapor pressure is 760 mmHg, which is equal to atmospheric pressure. Therefore, desflurane will boil. Temperature at which boiling will occur in any liquid is when its vapor pressure will be equal to atmospheric pressure. So the boiling of desflurane occurs at 22.8 degrees. At 22.8, desflurane vapor pressure becomes 760, and that is equal to the atmospheric pressure. Therefore, desflurane will start boiling at such a low temperature. So clinical settings, right? So you understood what is the importance of boiling point for us? Boiling point of CO. Okay, how much it is? It is 58.6 degrees Celsius. It's very high. Do we encounter 58.6 degrees Celsius ever in our clinical settings at such a high temperature? No. Unless you will heat up sevoflurane on a flame and you will make it boil, that is when sevoflurane will boil. And that is when the sevoflurane saturated vapor pressure will be 760. Otherwise, what is the sevoflurane saturated vapor pressure at 20 degrees? It is 157. So saturated vapor pressure of CO at 20 degrees Celsius, 1 atmosphere is how much? It is 157 mmHg as per the table. Okay. If I want sevoflurane to boil, the sevoflurane saturated vapor pressure should become 760. And that is when sevoflurane will start boiling. So specific heat is not the same as latent heat of vaporization. Specific heat is, listen to the definition carefully, it is a number of calories. It is the energy that is required to increase the temperature of 1 gram of substance by 1 degree Celsius. Because I told you that as evaporation occurs, vaporization occurs, the liquid is going to cool, right? So how much heat should I give the agent to maintain its temperature and prevent cooling? Because I want to maintain a constant temperature, right? Because ongoing heat loss is happening by vaporization. So how much should I give to maintain its temperature? How much energy? That is why I need to know specific heat. We are constructing that vaporizer with a lot of metallic material. All right. So the specific heat of that material should be much more than that of the anesthetic agent. Okay. so that whenever we provide supplied heat, the vaporizer part should not get spoiled. So thermal conductivity, by its name, thermal heat conductivity is the speed. Okay, so it is a speed at which the heat will flow through a substance. Okay, so if you have a high thermal conductivity, there'll be a better distribution of heat and faster distribution of heat. If you have a low thermal conductivity, slow. So whenever we are using vaporizer, the metallic equipments that we're using in the vaporizer, we wanted to have a good high thermal conductivity so that when I give a supplied heat, the heat travels quickly.